Let's talk about Napoleon Bonaparte, the so-called short guy with the funny hat. You've probably heard the jokes, seen the cartoons, and maybe even pictured him as a tiny man with a big ego. But the real story? It's way more interesting than the myths. That whole Napoleon was short thing, that's mostly British propaganda. In reality, he was about average height for his time, roughly 5'6" or 5'7", which was pretty standard for 18th century France. The British just loved poking fun at their greatest rival, and the legend stuck. But what's truly wild is where he started. Napoleon was a nobody from Corsica, a rugged island that had only recently become part of France. He grew up speaking Italian, not French, and was seen as an outsider by the mainland elite. Yet within a single decade he would transform himself from a provincial misfit into the Emperor of France. Napoleon's rise wasn't just fast, it was meteoric. He didn't just climb the ladder, he rocketed up it, shattering the old rules and leaving the rest of Europe scrambling to keep up. For a whole generation he changed the course of European history, redrawing borders and rewriting destinies. At military school, he was the odd one out, mocked for his thick Corsican accent and humble background. The other students saw him as different, even strange. But instead of breaking him, the teasing only made him more determined. He developed a fierce ambition, a burning need to prove himself to everyone who doubted him. While his classmates partied and relaxed, Napoleon buried himself in books. He devoured military history, obsessed over strategy, and spent long nights studying maps by candlelight. He saw the world as a giant chessboard, and he was determined to become the master player who would move the pieces. Then, in 1789, the French Revolution exploded. The old world was turned upside down, kings fell, chaos reigned, and the streets of Paris ran wild. For most, it was terrifying, but for Napoleon, it was the moment he'd been waiting for. A chance to rise when everything else was falling apart. As the old order crumbled, Napoleon saw opportunity in the chaos. He climbed, one bloody rung at a time, seizing every chance to prove himself on the battlefield and in the halls of power. He was relentless, never backing down, always pushing forward. From a bullied Corsican kid to the master of Europe, Napoleon's journey is one of history's greatest transformations, a true glow-up that no one saw coming. He became a symbol of ambition, genius, and the power to change your own fate. And it all started with a chip on his shoulder, a relentless drive to prove everyone wrong, and the courage to seize his moment when the world was at its most chaotic. To understand Napoleon, you first have to understand the world he came from. The French Revolution wasn't just a political shakeup. It was a decade of chaos, violence, and uncertainty. Factions fought for control, mobs filled the streets, and the government was so weak, it was almost a punchline. France was a nation in turmoil, where yesterday's leaders could become tomorrow's victims overnight. The Directory, the ruling body at the time, was riddled with corruption. The economy was in shambles, money was worthless, people were hungry, and trust in leadership had evaporated. Meanwhile, foreign armies circled France like hungry sharks, waiting for the right moment to strike and tear the country apart. In the middle of this mess, the French army became the only institution that still worked. It was the one place where chaos didn't rule, and where your talent, not your family name, could actually get you somewhere. For many, the army was a rare island of order in a sea of confusion. With the old aristocrats either gone or in hiding, promotions came fast for anyone who could prove themselves on the battlefield. Suddenly, young officers with ambition and skill could rise through the ranks at lightning speed. For a young and ambitious Napoleon Bonaparte, the revolution was more than just a crisis. It was the ultimate career ladder. He saw opportunity where others saw only danger, and he was determined to climb as high as he could. While politicians in Paris argued endlessly and failed to act, Napoleon was out in the field, delivering real victories. Each success on the battlefield made his name echo louder across France, and his reputation as a brilliant leader grew with every campaign. The French public, exhausted by years of instability, began to see Napoleon not as another schemer, but as a genuine savior. He was the hero they'd been waiting for, someone who could restore order and pride to their battered nation. Every victory made him more popular with the people, and more threatening to the politicians back in Paris. Newspapers celebrated his triumphs and crowds cheered his name, but those in power started to worry about just how much influence he was gaining. In a country desperate for results, Napoleon was the man of action. He inspired loyalty in his troops and hope in the public, becoming the figure everyone looked to for direction and leadership. The government needed him to keep France safe, but they also feared the power he was accumulating. Every success made him harder to control, and the line between hero and threat grew thinner. Napoleon's power grew with every battle, fueled by the very instability the politicians couldn't fix. The more chaotic things became, the more people turned to him for solutions. While the politicians stayed indoors, arguing and hesitating, Napoleon was out there getting things done. He was a man of action in a world of talkers, and that made all the difference. In revolutionary France, results mattered more than promises. Napoleon's victories gave people hope, and his rise showed that anyone, at least in theory, could make it to the top. All of this set the stage for Napoleon's meteoric rise, a journey from obscurity to legend fueled by chaos, ambition, and the desperate need for a leader who could actually deliver. Napoleon's origin story as a general begins at the Siege of Toulon, 1793. Toulon had rebelled and let in the British and Spanish fleets, a disaster for France. The French army floundered until a 24-year-old artillery captain, Napoleon, proposed a bold plan: take the high ground, control the harbor, and force the enemy out. He was relentless, requisitioning cannons, training crews, and even fighting on the front lines. His plan worked. The French captured the key position, the British fled, and Toulon fell. Napoleon went from unknown captain to brigadier general overnight. Toulon was his debut, and he crushed it. France had a new hero, and his name was Napoleon Bonaparte. This victory put him on the map, and he never looked back. It was the first glimpse of his tactical genius. The world, and France, finally took notice. Napoleon's legend had begun, and he was just getting started. After Toulon, Napoleon took command of the ragtag army of Italy in 1796. The army was starving, unpaid, and demoralized. Paris expected him to fail. Instead, he inspired his troops with promises of glory and riches, winning their loyalty. He revolutionized warfare, moving fast, dividing enemies, and striking hard. The Austrians played by old rules. Napoleon rewrote them. In a year, he crushed Austria's forces, conquered northern Italy, and sent treasure back to France. He became more than a general. He was a political force, running Italy like his own domain. The Italian campaign proved he was a master strategist and motivator. Paris couldn't ignore him now. Napoleon had turned a forgotten army into a legend. His audacity changed the game in Europe, and his ambitions were only growing. After his stunning victories in Italy, Napoleon's popularity soared to almost dangerous levels. He was becoming a national celebrity, and the government grew uneasy. Their solution? Send him far away to Egypt on a mission that was as much about removing him from Paris as it was about military strategy. Officially, the campaign was to disrupt British trade routes to India and challenge British influence in the East. Unofficially, it was a clever way to sideline a general who was becoming too powerful for comfort in the heart of France. Napoleon, ever the visionary, seized the opportunity. He didn't just bring an army, he assembled a team of over 150 scientists, engineers, and artists, launching not only a military campaign, but a scientific expedition that would change the world's understanding of ancient Egypt. Their discoveries were groundbreaking. The most famous was the Rosetta Stone, a key that would eventually unlock the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs and lay the foundation for modern Egyptology. On the battlefield, Napoleon scored a dramatic victory at the Battle of the Pyramids, cementing his reputation as a military genius. But the triumph was short-lived. Admiral Nelson's British fleet ambushed and destroyed the French navy at the Battle of the Nile, leaving Napoleon's forces stranded. With no way home, the French army faced brutal conditions, scorching heat, disease, and dwindling supplies. Morale plummeted as the dream of glory faded into a harsh reality. Napoleon attempted to turn things around by invading Syria, but the campaign failed miserably. His troops, exhausted and battered, were forced to retreat, and the situation grew desperate. Yet, in true Napoleon fashion, he managed to spin disaster into opportunity. Through clever propaganda and bold storytelling, he recast the failed campaign as a tale of heroism and discovery. Sensing political chaos brewing back in France, Napoleon made a daring escape, abandoning his army and slipping away under the cover of night to return home. He arrived in Paris to a hero's welcome. Despite the military disaster, he was celebrated as a conqueror, his failures transformed into legendary achievements. It was a masterclass in self-promotion and image management. Napoleon's ability to control the narrative was unmatched. The Egyptian adventure, though a military failure, became a cornerstone of his legend. It inspired artists, scholars, and the public, and added a new layer to his mythos. And most importantly, it set the stage for his next bold move, one that would change the course of French and world history. Napoleon returned to a France in crisis. Corrupt government, economic disaster, and public exhaustion. He joined forces with politicians like Sieyès to stage a coup in November 1799. The plan used a fake threat to move the legislature, then dissolve the government with military force. Things got messy, Napoleon panicked, but his brother Lucien rallied the troops, soldiers stormed the chamber, and the Directory was overthrown. The coup ended with brute force, not smooth politics. Napoleon emerged as the real power. France had a new master and he wasn't sharing. The age of Napoleon had begun. As first consul, Napoleon wasted no time fixing France. He stabilized the economy, creating the Bank of France, a new currency, and fairer taxes. He healed social rifts, signing the Concordat with the Pope to restore peace with the Church. Aristocrats were welcomed back, and government was centralized with loyal prefects. He built elite schools to train leaders by merit, not birth. In a few years, he brought order and prosperity to a nation wrecked by revolution. Napoleon proved he was more than a general, he was a nation builder. His reforms won over peasants, business, and even former enemies. France became efficient, unified, and strong. The chaos of the revolution was over. Napoleon was in control. Napoleon's greatest legacy? The Napoleonic Code. Before him, France's laws were a confusing mess, different everywhere, unfair to most. Napoleon pushed through a single, clear legal code for all. It guaranteed equality before the law, property rights, and religious freedom, core revolutionary ideals. But it also reflected his era's limits. Women's rights were restricted and slavery was reinstated in the colonies. Despite flaws, the code was revolutionary, adopted across Europe and beyond. It's still the foundation of legal systems in many countries today. Napoleon's laws outlasted his empire. His legal system went viral and changed the world. By 1804, Napoleon had it all: power, popularity, and peace. But first consul wasn't enough. He wanted to be emperor. An assassination plot gave him the excuse. He claimed only a hereditary empire could protect France. A national referendum, carefully managed, made him emperor by popular vote. The coronation was pure spectacle. Napoleon crowned himself, not the Pope. He made it clear, his power came from himself and the people, not tradition. The revolution ended, the empire began. The republic's ideals gave way to order and glory. Napoleon, once an outsider, was now emperor of the French. The journey from Corsican kid to ruler of Europe was complete. His rise was over. His reign had begun. France traded chaos for a new kind of monarchy, and the world would never be the same.